The arena burned with crimson light, the illumination pulsing in rhythm with the crowd's deafening roar. Metallic walls caught and echoed the sounds, the vibration rolling through the bones of every spectator pressed against the humming energy barriers. The air carried the acrid tang of spent plasma discharges and sweat, a haze of recycled oxygen clinging to every breath. At the heart of this underbelly coliseum, beneath the weight of alien eyes and the orbit of a cold gas giant, the champion stood triumphant once more. She was called Kaylin, known across the neutral stations as the Duel Master, a warrior bred from childhood to be lethal grace made flesh. Her armor, black as void stone and etched with jagged red lines that pulsed like veins of molten ore, gleamed beneath the lights. The Vero sword in her hand still dripped with the luminous ichor of the Gorathan Titan who had fallen at her feet only moments earlier. She raised the weapon high, acknowledging the mob's frenzy, the thunder of victory as credits and fortunes exchanged hands across the tiers. The crowd adored her, not simply because she won, though she always won, but because she did so with a beauty sharpened into danger, an artistry of motion that elevated violence into something akin to theater. Each duel added another story to her legend, another desperate challenger who believed they could topple the unbeatable and instead became a memory written in blood across the platform floor. Kaylin's amber eyes swept over them, her expression calm, distant, but within her chest burned the fire of her caste's teachings, to be feared, to be admired, to be eternal. And yet, through the din, she felt something that unsettled her. From the narrow maintenance passage at the edge of the chamber, where shadows clung thick and heavy, a pair of hazel eyes lingered. They did not look upon her with awe, nor envy, nor fear. They regarded her with an intensity that cut through the spectacle and settled into her like a blade between ribs. The mechanic. She had noticed him before, always at the periphery, always working quietly on damaged equipment hauled from the arena floor. He leaned now against the cold steel of the corridor wall, hands scarred from years of repairs, uniform streaked with oil and coolant. His dark hair fell across his brow, obscuring half his face, but she felt the weight of his gaze as surely as if it were a hand against her cheek. He should have turned away when her eyes found him. Protocol demanded respect, demanded distance. Yet he held her stare for a heartbeat too long, and something unspoken pulsed in that electric moment before the crowd's cacophony dragged her attention away. The overseer's voice boomed across the chamber, translations rippling into a dozen tongues. Citizens. Once again, Kaylin of the Orion caste has proved her dominance. Return tomorrow for another night of glory. The words washed over her, irrelevant compared to the memory of those eyes. When she looked back, the corridor was empty. That night, she carried the phantom of him into her solitude, unsettled in a way no weapon ever had managed. Her caste had trained her to anticipate strikes, to predict weakness, to dismantle opponents before they could act. But the human mechanic, quiet and unreadable, was a puzzle she could not solve. Hours later, in the low thrum of the repair bay, that puzzle became flesh again. The workshop glowed under a single harsh light, illuminating scattered tools and half-dismantled armor pieces. He, Draven Hale, she would later learn, sat hunched over her chest plate, fingers working with delicate precision. Where others would see little more than scarred plating, he traced the living fibers woven through the armor as though reading scripture. The systems were bioresponsive, amplifying her strength, echoing her heart rate, tuned to her emotions. Even now, his touch stirred faint echoes, rage, triumph, the thrum of combat still fresh within the alloy. Kaylin stepped into the threshold, no longer cloaked in the regalia of ceremony but in the tight undersuit of a fighter. The tribal markings down her throat glowed faintly in the dim light. Working late again, mechanic, she said, her voice carrying the lilting precision of someone who had mastered speech in more than one tongue. Hour doesn't fix itself, Draven replied without looking up. Straightening, he winced faintly as his back cracked, a small reminder that he was no longer young, though the strength in his posture hinted at years lived harder than most. Someone's got to keep the station's champion in one piece. Her steps were nearly soundless across the grated floor until she stood close, her presence overwhelming in the small space. She reached for her gauntlet where it lay half-repaired on the table, and her fingers brushed against his. The shock of contact was sharp, unexpected, not from static or residual charge but from something more primal. "You repair more than metal," she murmured, her gaze locked on his. "You understand things with your hands." He flushed faintly, unused to such direct words. "It's just mechanics," he muttered. "Nothing special." "Show me." He hesitated only a moment before moving beside her. He guided her hand across the gauntlet's surface, tracing the line of embedded circuitry, explaining how the system mapped heart rate, tension, adrenaline. His voice was steady, yet his fingers lingered over hers, his warmth undeniable. The armor pulsed suddenly with a light unfamiliar even to Kalen. Purple, threaded with veins of gold, glowing in rhythm with both their pulses.
Her breath caught. "What does that mean?" He swallowed. I don't know. It's not standard." For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, inches apart, as though the entire station waited to see if the universe itself would shatter. Then Kalen stepped back. The glow faded, the moment broken, though its echo clung stubbornly to them both. "The repairs are satisfactory," she said, her tone returned to ceremonial calm. She moved to leave, but at the door, she paused. "Tomorrow, you will show me more, about how the systems respond in training." He only nodded, unwilling to trust his voice. And when she was gone, he stared down at his scarred hands as if they belonged to someone else entirely, someone who had just touched destiny. The training deck lay far below the glittering tiers of the arena, buried in forgotten corridors where only the hum of the station's old processors kept vigil. Here, the noise of credits changing hands and the echo of bloodthirsty crowds gave way to silence broken only by the rhythm of breath and steel. It was a place of shadows and discipline, of repetition and refinement. Kalen had chosen it deliberately, a refuge where no overseer's eyes could follow her. Draven stood in the observation alcove, his tools at his hip and a diagnostic slate flickering pale blue in his hands. He told himself he was there only for technical oversight, to ensure the armor he'd repaired functioned properly under live strain. Yet his gaze rarely left Kalen's form as she moved across the training mat. She flowed through her combat drills like water poured into human shape, every step measured, every strike precise, her body a weapon honed through years of cast conditioning. The fibers of her armor shifted with her, glowing faintly in rhythm with the power in her movements. She was a storm harnessed in flesh, and Draven felt himself drawn helplessly into her orbit. "You're staring, mechanic," her voice called out mid-sequence, sharp as a blade. She didn't break stride, didn't glance his way, but the faint amusement beneath her words reached him anyway. "The left shoulder actuator is still running 3% below optimal," he answered smoothly, lying through his teeth just to justify his attention. She halted, breath steady, eyes glowing faintly amber as she tilted her head toward him. "Then show me." Draven descended from the alcove, boots striking the floor with quiet weight. He approached with deliberate calm, though his heart pounded faster than it had in years. Standing this close, the heat of her presence pressed into him, her markings burning faint red against pale skin where the armor parted. He reached carefully for the shoulder node, fingers brushing the seam between metal and flesh. "The neural interface sometimes misreads tension," he explained, tracing the delicate circuitry with practiced hands. "External factors can confuse it." "External factors," she repeated, voice low, almost teasing. "Like what?" He didn't answer, not with words. His thumb lingered against the curve of her collar, and the armor flared once more with that impossible shade of purple threaded with gold. Their eyes met, locked in a silence more dangerous than any duel she had fought. The tension shattered when Kalen moved faster than thought. One heartbeat she stood relaxed before him, the next, her training blade was drawn, its tip hovering an inch from his throat. Her stance was perfect, predatory, daring him to flinch. "You've seen battle," she said softly. "Your stance gives you away. Where did you learn to move like a soldier?" Draven's jaw tightened. "I'm just a mechanic." She circled him slowly, the blade never wavering, her gaze dissecting him as though stripping away every layer he had built to hide his past. "Prove it." He raised his hands in surrender, but instinct moved faster than reason. As she lunged, he dropped low, sweeping her legs out from under her while locking her wrist in a grip that twisted the weapon away. It was a soldier's move, dirty, efficient, meant to end a fight before it began. And it left Kalen pinned against the wall, her weapon useless between them. They froze, breath mingling in the scant space left. The armor lit again in wild patterns neither had seen before, streaks of color racing across its surface like living fire. Her pupils dilated, her pulse a rapid drum beneath his hand. "Where did you learn that?" she whispered. "Nowhere that matters anymore," he rasped. "And it wasn't honorable. My people," she murmured, eyes searching his face, "have never known anything like you." Her free hand rose, settling against his chest over the thrum of his heart. The contact was fire and lightning, every nerve burning at once. He wanted to step away, to breathe, but his body refused him. "This is dangerous," he managed. "I know," she breathed back. And then she kissed him. It began hesitant, exploratory, the barest brush of lips testing boundaries that should never be crossed. But the hesitation fractured in an instant, replaced by hunger. Her hand fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. His own fingers tangled in the braids woven with threads of metal that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Weeks of silent looks, of touches disguised as repairs, of words left unsaid, all of it poured into that one desperate exchange. When they broke apart, both trembled, armor still pulsing in chaotic light, echoing what had just passed between them. The room seemed smaller now, the air too thin, the silence too loud. "We should stop," Draven said, though his hands remained on her shoulders. "Yes," she agreed, though neither of them moved away. Her forehead rested against his, and for a moment they simply breathed the same air, suspended on the edge of something that could undo them both. The chime of the station's bells shattered the moment, dragging them back to reality. They separated reluctantly, each retreating into themselves. Yet the truth lingered, undeniable. The mechanic was no simple worker, and the champion was no longer untouchable. Over the following days, they wove a dangerous dance between training drills and whispered conversations. His hands adjusted her armor, hers lingered too long on his wrist. Their movements blurred the line between professional duty and something forbidden, each encounter thickening the thread that bound them together. One evening, the thread snapped taut in a different way. The cantina smelled of stale alcohol and synthetic smoke, its dim light hiding faces that wanted anonymity. Draven sat in a corner booth, nursing a drink he didn't taste, lost in thoughts of amber eyes and impossible decisions. That was when he heard it, a familiar voice, one he thought buried in the past. "Well, I'll be damned." Draven Hale, alive and breathing. He looked up into the scarred face of Terran Voss, once a staff sergeant in the Colonial Defense Force. A man who knew him too well. A man who knew exactly what he had been before he'd become just a mechanic. The past had found him, and with it, danger he could no longer ignore. The cantina's dim light seemed to sharpen as soon as Terran Voss slid into the booth opposite Draven. The man carried himself like someone who had survived too many firefights to ever relax again, broad shoulders hunched just enough to keep his movements casual, but his pale eyes restless, searching, always assessing. Even his smile looked like a scar. 5 years, Terran said, voice low but edged with mockery. And you thought you could just disappear. Funny how neutral stations make poor hiding places. Draven set his glass down slowly, forcing his hands to remain steady. The burn of synthetic whiskey lingered at the back of his throat. "I'm not hiding," he replied flatly. Terran chuckled without humor. "Sure. And I'm just here for the drinks." He leaned closer, voice dropping further. "Word is, you vanished after Kepler 7. Inquiry branded you reckless, scapegoated you for a command decision that killed 37 soldiers. But I was there, Draven. I know the truth. You don't screw up, you adapt. And that's what makes you dangerous." The memories surged back like smoke in his lungs, screams in collapsing corridors, soldiers buying time with their lives, his own voice giving impossible orders because no one else had. He'd buried that part of himself beneath grease-stained overalls and repair work, yet Terran's words pulled the coffin lid back open. Before Draven could respond, a presence swept into the cantina that silenced even the loudest alien chatter. Kaelin. No ceremonial cloak, no Vero sword flashing beneath crimson light, just simple robes that somehow clung to her with predatory grace. Her amber gaze cut across the room until it found him, and she crossed the floor as though she owned it. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, standing tall beside their booth. Her voice was soft, but it carried enough weight to still Terran's smirk. "No problem at all," he said smoothly, though his eyes flicked between them, calculating. He rose briefly in mock courtesy before dropping back into the seat. "Just catching up with an old friend." Kaelin's lips curved into something between a smile and a warning. "A friend," she repeated, her tone making clear the word was inadequate. Terran's eyebrows lifted. "Well, well. The great Draven Hale entangled with the station's champion. I thought you swore off, complications." Heat pricked under Draven's skin, but before he could answer, Kaelin set a hand on his shoulder, firm and protective. "Perhaps your friend would like to hear about his work," she said evenly, "the innovations he's designed for the arena's systems." That snapped Terran's attention sharp. His grin faded into something more predatory. "Innovations, you say? Interesting." Draven shook his head. "It's nothing. Everything he touches becomes more than nothing," Kaelin countered softly, eyes still locked on Terran. "He sees what others miss. Finds victory where others expect only failure." Terran leaned back, studying them both with a soldier's instinct for leverage. Then, with a short laugh, he raised his drink in a mock toast. "To old ghosts and new possibilities. May they both survive longer than expected." But the tension he left behind sat like a loaded weapon between Draven and Kaelin. The days that followed unfolded in a blur of unease. Betting pools shifted unnaturally against Kaelin, whispers moving through the station that the Duel Master would finally fall. Even before the Overseer's announcement, Draven recognized the pattern. In the field, it had been the same. When odds changed too fast, someone had stacked the fight. Back in the preparation chamber, Kaelin sat in silence, her armor polished to mirror brightness. Draven read diagnostics, his voice professional though his chest was a battlefield of dread. Neural interface is running at peak efficiency. Reaction times optimal. Power coupling stable. "You don't believe that matters," she said without looking at him. He hesitated, then admitted, "No. If betting shifts this heavily, someone's bought the outcome." Her tribal markings pulsed faintly as she turned to face him. "Do you suggest I refuse to fight? That I hide?" "Yes," he said, surprising even himself. "We could leave. Find a ship. There are other arenas, other places where they don't know you." Kaelin's lips twitched into a sad smile. "I was bred for this. I don't run from fights. Especially not the ones rigged against me." Her defiance stoked something in him, fear, admiration, love. He had seen soldiers break under lesser pressure. Yet here she was, ready to walk willingly into the jaws of betrayal. The final chime sounded. The chamber doors began their mechanical groan toward the arena. She rose, blade at her side, every inch the champion she had been born to be. Stay close to the exit tunnels, she murmured. If this ends poorly, you may yet escape. I'm not leaving you, Draven answered, his voice steady in a way he hadn't heard since the war. She paused, met his eyes, and for the briefest moment let gratitude show. I know. Then she stepped into the storm of lights and thunder. The roar of the crowd was different tonight, hungrier, sharper. Not the celebration of victory but the bloodlust of anticipation. They wanted to see the unbeatable undone. Kalen's first opponent lumbered forward, a Varlaxian brute with muscles braided with synthetic fibers and a monomolecular blade humming at impossible frequency. His strike sang through the air with a pitch too high for most ears, but Kalen's Vero sword met it in a flash that sent vibrations up her arm. The second opponent darted like a shadow, Xylarian quick and flexible, weaving through attacks to snap at her flanks. Their rhythm together was deadly, strength and speed in tandem, pinning her against the arena walls. And waiting at the edges, patient and calculating, the third fighter, a Cathari insectoid, multiple eyes watching every motion, claws twitching for the perfect moment to strike. From the maintenance corridors, Draven's hands flew over the control slate. He couldn't intervene directly, but he knew the arena's systems better than anyone alive. He bypassed safety locks, seized control of the holographic projectors, and whispered into her calm. Kalen, this is Draven. I can project illusions. 5-second delay. It's all I've got. Her breath hissed back, strained. Do it. A shimmering illusion flared between her and the Varlaxian, a Gorathan warrior conjured from solid light. The brute, dulled by combat stimulants, lunged at the phantom. Kalen seized the opening, slicing through his actuator, leaving him howling and crippled. The Xylarian and Cathari, however, were not fooled. They closed in, blades and claws singing death. Kalen stumbled under their relentless strikes, her armor flaring under stress. Draven, she gasped, the Cathari, weak point in its neural coupling. But I can't reach it. His mind flashed to the exoskeleton schematics he'd studied long ago. He knew the target, small as a coin, impossible to hit in combat. Unless. Your left gauntlet, he said, overriding systems. Prototype targeting array. I'll guide it. Through the interface, he became a ghost in her armor, his will guiding her movements. A thin, focused laser lanced from her gauntlet, invisible but deadly. It pierced the Cathari's coupling, and the insectoid collapsed, limbs twitching before going still. 2 down. The Xylarian froze, weighing its chances, then fled into the shadows. Kalen stood alone, bloodied but unbroken. The crowd erupted, not in joy, not in disappointment, but in stunned disbelief. The duel master had defied even the impossible. And in the shadows, Draven realized something had shifted forever. The repair bay smelled of burnt circuitry and ionized sweat, the scent of survival clinging to every panel and tool. Kalen sat on the bench, armor scarred from the impossible fight, her breathing slow but controlled. Draven worked in silence, running diagnostics with hands that shook only when she wasn't looking. Every scrape of metal, every flicker of the armor's glow, carried the weight of what they had survived together. You saved me, she said quietly. He glanced up, met her gaze, and corrected her, we saved you. My head, your blade. That's what we are. Her lips curved into the faintest of smiles. What we can be. The moment fractured when the bay doors hissed open. Terran strode in, eyes sharp, expression grim. We need to move. Now. Overseer's furious, says you broke the rules. He's talking about voiding contracts, permanent bans. Worse, security saw the override codes. They know you interfered. Kalen's markings pulsed faintly as she asked, calm but lethal, who? Veeler, Terran said. The Overseer himself. He's tied to your own caste's High Council. They wanted one of their chosen sons to take the title. You winning was an insult. Rigging the fight was his solution. Tonight was meant to erase you. The words cut deeper than any blade. Betrayal from her own people, the caste she had bled for, who had built her legend. Kaelin's expression hardened into stone. So be it. Draven's jaw clenched. We expose him. Make it public. No, Kaelin shook her head. That would make me a symbol. A martyr for his enemies to exploit. I will not be their tool. She looked to both men, amber eyes fierce. We take this fight to him, on our terms. The next 3 days blurred into strategy and sabotage. Terran funneled information through old contacts in security, while Draven became a ghost inside the station systems. He traced Velar's financial records, intercepted encrypted messages, and found the threads of corruption woven deep into council politics. Kaelin moved among the fighters' lower ranks, whispering truths in the ears of trainers, technicians, and overlooked warriors who had long suspected the games were rigged. The whispers became rumors, the rumors became outrage, and soon the entire station hummed with fury. Screens flickered with leaked documents, Velar's private ledgers, proof of payoffs, messages conspiring with the council to stage Kaelin's downfall. By the 4th day, Velar's empire cracked. His influence evaporated, his allies withdrew, and the crowds who once bayed for Kaelin's blood now shouted for his head. Under pressure, the governing board stripped him of power and banished him from the station. The council, humiliated, disavowed him in public, desperate to contain the damage. It was a victory without a duel, a battle of shadows and information, and in some ways it felt sharper than any blade. On the observation deck, Kaelin and Draven stood side by side as Velar's shuttle detached from the docking ring, a small shape swallowed by the storms of the gas giant below. For once, silence reigned between them, not the silence of repression, but of something new, fragile, and unspoken. What now? Draven asked finally, voice softer than she had ever heard it. We cannot stay, Kaelin replied. My honor is restored, but my enemies are not gone. Your identity is compromised. Here we are only prey, waiting to be cornered. He studied her, the woman who had been a weapon, a legend, and now something even greater. Then where? Her smile, rare, radiant, unarmored, caught him off guard. The universe is vast. Somewhere out there, an exiled duel master and a stubborn mechanic can carve their own place. Together. For the first time since Kepler-7, hope stirred in him, not the brittle hope of orders or survival, but something alive. He reached for her hand. She didn't flinch. Their fingers locked, scarred human and alien warrior, bound not by caste or past but by choice. To the stars, then, he said. To a new beginning, she answered, and her lips found his in a kiss that sealed more than love. It sealed resolve. Beyond them, the gas giant raged in eternal storms, a beautiful, chaotic backdrop for two souls who had turned against their fates. The duel master and the mechanic, no longer champion and servant, no longer soldier and exile, but a force ready to face whatever the galaxy hurled their way. The duel was over. And they had won. And that, my friends, is the end of their story, or rather, the beginning of it. Kaelin and Draven walked away from the only lives they had ever known. She, a warrior bred to fight until her body broke. He, a soldier turned mechanic haunted by ghosts of orders he never should have obeyed. Together, they found something worth more than titles or contracts, freedom. It's rare, isn't it? To watch a champion step down not because they lost, but because they finally chose their own destiny. To see a man once buried in guilt rediscover his strength not in war, but in love. Their path wasn't marked by honor codes or overseers' decrees, it was carved in defiance. I want you to picture them, a stolen shuttle breaking orbit, their hands locked across a console, the storms of a gas giant fading into distant memory. Ahead lies uncertainty, danger, and a galaxy waiting to test them. But for once, neither runs from it. They face it together. And maybe that's the heart of this tale. That no matter how rigged the fight, no matter how deep the betrayal, some things are still worth standing for. A glance across a crowded arena. A touch sparking colors never seen before. A kiss in the shadows that rewrites everything. If you felt the pull of this story, if Kalen and Draven's fight for love, freedom, and honor hit you like it hit me, then don't let this be where our journey ends. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next adventure. Smash that like button if you want to see more stories of warriors, rebels, and impossible odds. And share this video with someone who needs reminding, even in the darkest arenas, there's always a way to win.